Hi, my name is Matt, and you're listening to Falling Uphill on 8 Ball Radio. Falling Uphill is about ordinary people in unthinkable situations, flying blind and hoping for the best. Today you're going to hear 3 stories. Scratching the Surface is told by Augustus. The second story that you'll hear is called Rash Judgment, and it's told by Dan. And the last one that you'll hear is called Short Staffed, and it's told by Lauren. All these guests have chosen to remain anonymous. These are true stories told by each guest to the best of their recollection.
I was born in the Philippines, and my dad was a white American businessman who set up shop over there. He had me declared as the birth of a citizen abroad. That gave me dual citizenship from the start. I was going to college at a university on the East Coast. Me and a friend took a summer vacation backpacking trip through Europe. We came to Barcelona. We were walking down the main drag, Las Ramblas probably, one night, being drunk and going from bar to bar. This guy came up to us and said, "Hey, are you guys Americans?" Like, "Yeah." "Oh, that's great. I'm whoever, just trying to make friends. Our team just won a big soccer match. Hey, you want to do a soccer dance with me? It's a Spanish soccer dance." My friend didn't want to, but I was drunk and I was like, "Yeah, I'll learn the Spanish soccer dance." And he put his arm around me. We did the kicks and everything and sang a little song. And he was like, "Oh, okay, well, nice to meet you. I'll be on my way." And I didn't think anything of it. What a funny man. Then we get to the bar and I reach for my wallet and it wasn't there. I was like, well, crap, I got my wallet taken. So I got pickpocketed, and after several unsuccessful attempts to recover the money or the cash, we decided to leave Barcelona and move on to the next place. While we were waiting at the train station, I left my bags with my friend. They said, "Watch my bags, I'm just going to go to the bathroom." And when I was coming back from the bathroom, he was yelling, Gus, someone took your bag. Stay with the bags. I'm going to go try to run after him." I'm like, God damn it. So he goes over and tries to run after the guy. Of course, does not catch him. His bags were fine, but now I had no wallet, no other things except whatever was in my pockets, which included my passport. So for the rest of the trip, I decided, in case this happens again, I'm definitely keeping my passport in my front pocket, nothing will happen to it, etc., etc. After that, he went back to the States, and I went to the Philippines to visit my dad. When I entered the Philippines, the immigration agent looked at my passport and said, "What's wrong with your passport? It's a little wrinkly." And I was like, "Oh, well, the laminate must be coming off a little bit." And then she looked at me and said, "Well, you should really look at that before you leave." I'm like, "Yeah, I'll get around to it," not really thinking anything of it. It's August, school's starting back up again. I fly back. You have to go through customs and immigration wherever you enter the U.S. I'd done this 1,000 times before. The officer takes the passport, he looked at it, and then he looked at it some more. He was thumbing the part of the passport where the laminate came off. And he was like, "What happened to your passport?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, I meant to get that looked at while I was in the Philippines just now, and then I gave the story about hiking through Europe." And he looks at me and he's like, "Okay, how long have you been a U.S. citizen?" So I said, "I'm not sure. For a very long time, I suppose." And he looks at me and he writes a big letter I on my customs form and he points me to another office and says, "Okay, just take this and give your passport to the people at the desk in that office." I said, "What is that office?" Like, "Sir, could you please just go to the office and give them your documents?" I said, "Okay, whatever." This was pre-9/11, so there was no unified customs and border protection. It was U.S. Customs, and the immigration part was the INS, the Immigration and Naturalization Services, and the INS office was to the side of all the immigration booths. I go there. There's a bunch of people. Some are agitated, some are just waiting. They're all foreigners. I'm not sure what I'm doing in the office. And I give my form and my passport to the agent, and I say, yeah, so the other officer over there told me to come here and give you these. I'm not sure. I've never done this before. Okay, well, just have a seat, sir, and we'll look at these and take care of you right away. He went to the back. I just sat around. And then he came out. And he was visibly angry. He started storming towards me with the passport open to the front page, and he shoved the passport in my face and he said, okay, so now what you're going to do is tell me your real name, because that's not you. This guy in the passport, that's not you. And I was just like, what? What do you mean it's my real name? It's on the passport. It's like, no, this isn't your passport. You might have gotten into the United States with it several times before, but you're not getting in today, buddy. I just didn't have an answer. He showed me the passport. He explained that it couldn't be me. The laminate was coming off. And I said, yes, that's right. And I told him the story about the laminate coming off. So the laminate was like, no. We have equipment to check that. That's not what happened here. The laminate's coming off. You've obviously removed this person's picture and inserted your own. And you've been using this passport. And I said, no, that's not the case. I made all the usual protests. Very calmly, though. I'm a meek person by nature. And that was it. He said, okay, well, we're going to have to do this the hard way then. So we got another officer involved. They sat me down on the bench. They removed everything from my pockets. They handcuffed one of my arms to the chair, and they started going through my things and asking me a whole bunch of questions. This didn't go well. When I tried to corroborate, they looked at my wallet and they said, there's nothing in your wallet except a British rail pass, which was there because we went to Britain after Barcelona. And they said, that's very suspicious. And I explained, well, the thing about that is I don't have my ID or credit cards because my wallet was stolen. It was pickpocketed in Spain, and all my things were also stolen in Spain. And they said, okay, well, did you go to the police and file a report? I said, yes, of course I did. And then I just stopped myself. I'm like, God damn it. Yeah, I did go to the police in Barcelona. I filed a police report. They gave me a copy of it. And I left the police station feeling really dejected. I said, they're not going to catch this guy. This happens all the time. And I crumpled up the police report and threw it in the next trash can I saw. The officers said, well, that is convenient that you filed a police report but then don't have any record of it and all your other identification was stolen. So they tried something else. They said, well, your passport has a signature. Please reproduce the signature in your passport. And I said, fuck, again. The passport was issued when I was 13 years old. I don't know how I used to sign my name. I mean, obviously it's right there. The passport wasn't going to be renewed for another year or whatever. And I said, that signature was a long time ago. I've actually changed my signature. Like an idiot trying to be fancy around when I was 16 or so, I deliberately tried to change my signature along with all my handwriting to make it neater, but I could no longer reproduce the old signature. And so they said, okay, so you have no other identification because you got pickpocketed, but you don't have a police report because you threw it away, and you can't reproduce the signature on the passport because it was so long ago. Do you know how bad this looks? I tried to explain that it's a series of unfortunate circumstances. They were not having it. I kept a journal during my trip, and they found that. The journal was written entirely in German. I was learning German at the time. I was pretty good at it, and I wrote my journal in German. And they said, why is your journal in German? And I explained the situation. Okay, all right, whatever. They even brought somebody in and verified that I spoke German by having a short conversation with me in German. I was extremely nervous. I had one hand handcuffed to the bench, and with the other, I took out a pencil and I started chewing on it, and they didn't like that. They snatched it away from me and they said, I don't know what you're doing with this pencil, but we're taking it away. We don't want you to hurt yourself or anybody else. Like I'm MacGyver or James Bond or something. I'm going to pick the lock on my handcuff with a pencil, then stab everyone in the room. It was unreal. I was very frightened. They had moved me to a room at this point, and they kept leaving me in the room for several minutes to do whatever they do, or maybe nothing. Maybe that's just one of those tactics. Let the person stew in his own juices for a while. I told them that A friend of my father was waiting for me outside. He was waiting for me outside because I had 6 hours between my arrival in San Francisco and my flight to the East Coast. And my father's friend was going to meet me for dinner. I knew this guy for a long time. And I told him that. I gave him his name. I said, this guy's waiting for me. All you have to do is just go outside those doors and ask for the person that's looking for Gus, and you'll find him. He's going to be there and he'll tell you everything. And so they left, and then they came back and they're like, yeah, there's nobody out there. We said your name. And there were a few people who just scurried off. They just ran off. Can you tell me about that? I'm like, no, I can't. I don't know anything about that. It's ridiculous. My father's friend got stuck in traffic, so he hadn't arrived. And he wasn't going to arrive for another couple hours, by which time he probably just assumed that I had gone off and did my own thing and then just went on his merry way. But the timing didn't work out for me, certainly not. They did use this again because they came back a few minutes later and they said, so your accomplices outside finally did get in contact with us. They told us the whole thing. If you will just corroborate their story, we can process you and send you on a plane back home. My accomplices? I don't have any accomplices. They've already confessed. It's just your turn. I have nothing to confess. I have no accomplices, and it just kept going like this bad movie. They brought a couple of other officers in, these huge guys with guns, and they're placing their hand on their holsters and just being intimidating and asking me things like, how old are you? And I said, I'm 18. It's like, oh, 18. Oh, yeah, you're going to the big house. You're going to be here for a while. They don't treat people well in there. And I'm like, you're mistaken. You can't do this. Don't I get a phone call? Please, let me just call somebody. And they said, no, buddy, you don't have a phone call. You're not in the United States. You don't have rights. Through those doors are the United States. That's what's through those doors. The U.S. is through those doors. This is an area where you're entering the United States. You don't have any rights. We'll decide what happens to you. I started crying because it was hopeless. They weren't listening. They weren't doing anything. They ridiculed me for crying and said that I better not cry in the big house and all of that. And it just went on like this, just on and on and on. At a certain point, they tried to strike a deal with me. They said, look, if you tell us your real name, we'll put you on a plane back home. Would you like that? And I had to think about it for a second. I repeated it. If I tell you my real name, you'll let me go. Because that meant putting me on a plane back to the Philippines, and there I could be with my dad, and he would sort everything out. We would go to the embassy. Everything would be okay if I would just tell these guys some fake name or something like that, just to get them off my back and get out of there. I almost took the deal. I'm glad I didn't, because I'm pretty sure that would have made it almost impossible to come back if I had started lying. And so I stuck to my guns, and I said, that is my real name. And the guy banged on the table and left again. It was surreal. They took me to another room where they strip searched me. It wasn't very invasive. They didn't put their fingers anywhere, but I did have to strip down to my underwear. No more than that. And they checked me and all of that. And they left. They left the room. They closed the door, but I could still hear them outside. And one of the guys said to the others, you see that guy's passport? And the other guy said, yeah, I didn't really think it looked that bad. And I started banging on the door. I'm like, please, hello, stop, wait, can you tell somebody that? Come back. I told him to check everything. I have school records. Check the DMV in my home state. I was sure that their computers could access something that would corroborate my evidence. And they just looked at me and just shook their heads like, no, we're not going to do that. I'm like, just call somebody, call my father, sir, what you have to do is remain calm. You have to help me. It went on like that for several hours. At the end of it, I guess they got tired, I don't know what, but they came up and they said, okay, look, we're going to let you go. We're going to keep your passport because it's not valid, but we're going to let you enter the country today. And then in 30 days, you will appear before an INS judge in Arlington, Virginia, and you'll plead your case at that point, and they'll process you on that side of things. I said yes. Okay, great. Yeah, absolutely. Whatever. It's ridiculous, of course. This is just them saying, we fucked up, but we don't want to admit it. Because if they really thought that I wasn't supposed to be in the country and my passport was invalid, would they let me in and tell me to show up somewhere on the other side of the country in a month? No. But I wasn't going to question them. They started processing me. The officer that was handling me the whole time, this real asshole, he went back to harassing some other people. There was this lady at the desk who was finalizing my paperwork or whatever, and she was there the whole time, but she wasn't saying anything. And she just looked at me and said, you know, that whole thing, like, why didn't you speak up? Why didn't you threaten to sue us or get real angry? Why did you just take it? No American would just sit there and take it. I said, well, I just thought that if I followed instructions and complied that all this would be over soon because it was obviously a big mistake. And she just shook her head and she was like, that is not what you should have done. I was just thinking, I was like, you have this federal officer telling me that the way you should deal with an interrogation is to be belligerent and non-compliant with their instructions. You know, I'm not going to say anything like that. They gave me my personal effects back, all my things that they rummaged through and everything like that. And I started going out the door. I went out the wrong door, and the asshole was there again. He's like, hey buddy, that's the wrong door. That door goes to jail. You want to go to jail today? I'm like, no, I don't know which door. He's like, this is the right door. This is the door you want. And I walked past him, started walking through the door. He's like, I knew you'd see things my way. And I just bolted out of there. And finally, I was free. I was in the San Francisco airport. I rushed to the counter to try to get onto my flight. Of course, that didn't go well either because they said, okay, no problem, let me just see your ID. And I had to give them the whole story, and my flight was in 10 minutes. They accepted my British rail pass that had my picture on it as ID and sent me through the gates. I got back. I went back to school. But I had that court date 30 days from then, and I was freaking out. I told my father everything, and we got everybody involved, and we hired a lawyer, an immigration lawyer. I'm a U.S. citizen. I'm hiring an immigration lawyer to get me through an immigration hearing. And I started gathering everything that had my name on it. I went to the DMV, gathered all the records I could there, social security card, draft card, just all these things that proved that I was really Gus. And if I wasn't, why do I have all his stuff going back to childhood? I couldn't concentrate at school, really, or anything like that until this whole thing was over and done with. I was just a wreck. The day finally came. We went to this big building in Arlington. I was in a waiting chamber, and all these immigrants or foreigners that are just waiting around, waiting to get processed themselves, and I'm sitting here, and my lawyer's there, and I have my box full of things, and I think it's going to be a whole big thing. My number gets called up. I go into the judge's office, and he's behind a desk. He says, hello, how are you? And I say, yes, hello. And he takes out an envelope that had my passport in it, and he takes my passport out. He thumbs through it, and he looks at me and says, so, your passport got a little wrinkled, huh? Had the laminate come off a little bit? And I said, yeah, that is what happened. I got sweaty, and the laminate came off. It was hot and humid. And he looked, and he was like, well, yeah, that happens. He takes his stamp, stamps an entry stamp into the passport, hands it over to me, and says, there you go, welcome home. And that was it. That's what should have happened in San Francisco in the first place, but that isn't what happened. Ever since then, I've just had this innate distrust for law enforcement. I know what to do now. I'll yell and scream and make a fuss, but I just never know. Are they going to do this to me again? Is anything going to happen? I have no idea what they would have been able to do to me post 9/11, if they would have even let me go, or if I'd have been sitting in a detention cell for an indefinite period of time. I'm just going to say that if it had happened to my blonde-haired, green-eyed friend that I was traveling with, I don't think he would have had a problem. Me and my family, we did consider taking some sort of legal action against the government or legal action against the San Francisco INS office. But as time went on and investigating, how you would do this, it was too much. I didn't want to go back into it. Just got out fine. I don't want this to turn into a whole thing. Besides the whole race thing, I'm not really sure what could have been going through their minds. It was just a person at a desk having a power trip. He gets to do this every day.
My name is Dan. This was about 2002. It was right after Halloween, I just got out of college, so I'm living at home on Long Island with my dad. And I'm spending a lot of time with my friend Glenn after working hours, just kind of watching movies and living this weird in-between life between New York City and Long Island. Just around that time, he had gotten shingles, which is when chickenpox sort of comes back. And it's a pretty rough thing to have. Get this rash, and it hurts a lot, so he was pretty incapacitated, so I would just spend a lot of time kind of cheering him up and watching movies. I had just come home from a Halloween party with my friends in the city and my girlfriend, and they all stayed in the city, and I came home and just continued to watch movies with Glenn for the week. So, right after Halloween, I wake up one morning after hanging out with Glenn, and my eye is closed, and my skin is all rough, and I kind of feel like crap, and I don't know what to do, so I call Julia, my girlfriend, and I say, I'm not sure what to do, and she kind of berates me into going to the doctor immediately, which isn't what I would normally do. So I go to see this doctor. I had seen him a couple of times. His name is Dr. The way that I found Dr. was my dad gave me a postcard that he had sent to the house as an advertisement, and my dad told me, this guy looks nice. So that's why I went to him, which might have been a red flag to begin with, but I chose my doctor based on a postcard he sent to the house. And I told him the story about me hanging out with Glenn, and he had shingles. You know, he looks at me, and he kind of touches my eye, and he says, yeah, this looks like shingles. And I was like, oh, yeah, well, I feel like crap, and he's like, yeah, and your eyes closed, and he's like, the only thing is, shingles only appears on one side of the body. It's a nerve thing. It doesn't jump to the other nerve. And yours is. It's crossing over. It's not on one side of your face. It's kind of coming over to the other side of your face. That only happens when there's an immune issue. Usually something like AIDS. So this is like the craziest thing I ever heard, and I don't have anything to say. And he also says, oh, and you should probably go see an eye doctor, because otherwise you might lose that eye. So I'm 22 years old, and this is the scariest thing that anyone has ever said to me ever in my life as I'm sitting there, even though in my mind I'm like, I don't think that I have AIDS, or I've done things that should lead to that, or, you know, whatever. It doesn't matter. When someone says that to you, you kind of have this freak out moment, and you immediately run to the eye doctor to make sure you're not going to lose an eye. But before I did that, he said, oh, let's take some blood tests, let's do this whole workup, let's make sure and see exactly what's going on, but, you know, that's probably the diagnosis. So, he takes a bunch of blood work. I'm freaking out in my head. I don't know what to think. I try to make an eye doctor appointment. She can't see me till the next day, which is forever when you think you might have shingles with a chance of AIDS. I go to the eye doctor the next day. I don't tell anyone about this. I'm completely freaking out. My doctor gives me all of these painkillers, so I'm popping painkillers. So I kind of am in this very I'm in this dreamlike state where I think I'm going to possibly die. I go to the eye doctor the next day in the afternoon, and without even touching me, she says, what did your doctor say you had? And I said, shingles with the chance of AIDS. And she says, this is contact dermatitis. You can get something over the counter and put it on your skin, and your eye will not swell and go down. And she said, why do you feel like crap? Is there any other reason you might feel so terrible? And I said, oh, well, I'm not sure. She said, did you go out for Halloween? And I said, yeah, I guess it could be a hangover. And she said, are you allergic to anything? And I had not many allergies, but I had developed a strange allergy to adhesives, like Band-Aids and things. And I realized that I had slept that night next to my girlfriend, who had used spirit gum to attach her Halloween costume ears to her head. So that was on the pillow, and it must have gotten on my skin and near my eye and caused this to happen. So, semi-relieved, I go home, and my dad tells me, oh, there's a message for you on the machine, because it's pre-cell phones. And I listen to the message, and it's my doctor's office saying that I did not have any AIDS in my system. So I was all clear, which I had already known, but at least now my dad knew that as well. I never told my dad the story. I was just a little bit embarrassed that he might have heard that message, and God knows what he thought the story really was. I don't really know what has happened to that doctor to this day, if he's been sued for malpractice or anything like that. The sad part of the story is that wasn't the last time I went to him. I did not immediately discontinue going to this doctor because I think I just don't really like or trust doctors to begin with, and so, or I didn't in the past. I just never had maybe a really good experience, and so I had gotten sick. Basically, I went back to him because I had this really bad flu-like situation going on, and I don't really remember what happened, but he gave me some kind of medication that was not the right medication. And again, it got so bad that I wound up going to an ear doctor because my ears started clogging, and she looked at what he had given me and was like, this is not the right thing, and then gave me Cipro because I needed something really quickly to knock this thing out of my system. So no, he stuck on as my doctor for a little longer, and then I said, you know what, now I've had enough.
The Sunday before Memorial Day, which is kind of a tricky time. A lot of people go out of town for Memorial Day, but also Monday is a day that people have off work, so sometimes you get really slammed on Sunday nights when you wouldn't normally. When the bar is totally full, like on Saturday night, we have about 11 people working the floor. What we have on Sunday nights when we work is one waitress on the floor, a bartender, and a bar back. And then we have one guy in the kitchen. It's a pretty big difference in staffing. So we have 4 people working on this Sunday. My name is Lauren. I work at a bar that's pretty well known. It's a high-volume craft cocktail bar. I work there with my husband. He's the head bartender and the head waitress. The general atmosphere of this bar is, it's very sexy, it's very dimly lit. There are really plush chairs, there's couches that people can kind of cuddle up on, and there's no, some places have curtains and things like that. We don't have that. It's an open floor plan, it's kind of railroad style, so it's a really long bar. In the front, there's kind of a big banquette area where we have large parties, and then as you kind of go back further into the bar, the tables get smaller and it gets a little more private. I was working more than I normally did, so I actually don't normally work on Sundays. But I was working this Sunday as a favor to my boss because we were understaffed. It was already the 5th day of the week for me. I normally work 4 days a week because they're really long shifts. I was already kind of frustrated with the way that things have been going lately because I had been told that we were going to hire another waitress, and it had just been getting put off and put off and put off. And this new girl had come. I was so excited. I trained her. We opened at 5. It was slow the first part of the night. I sent her home around 8 o'clock, and it kind of felt like, oh, it's going to be a normal night. And then it started getting really insane. People started showing up, 1 person, 2 person, and then we got like a 5 top, a 10 top, an 8 top, like just filling up the whole room. And even at that point, I felt like, it's going to be a little crazy, but I can handle it. And then we just got straight up murdered. People just like flowing in the door. And I was getting overwhelmed, but I was trying to stay on top of it. And then I lost a guy's credit card. I never even ran the credit card. I just lost it. And he was trying to be really nice about it. And he came into the back with me, and we were looking through all the checkbooks and like looking on the ground and trying to find it. But it just wasn't anywhere to be found. He was getting frustrated naturally, and I understand he was totally in the right to be frustrated. But I couldn't find it, and he was like, this needs to be your priority. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm really overwhelmed right now. If you would just give me your number and your name, and when things kind of calm down a little bit, I'll try and look for it. That was not acceptable to him. And so he was physically standing in, like preventing me from running drinks. I had drinks piling up. And there was another guy outside who was also really pissed off. And then I had a whole sea of people. The drinks were taking like 20 minutes to get out. We only have 1 bartender, and our drinks are very complicated. I wanted to just like quit and leave, and you guys win. I can't do it. At one point ran by and was just like, I'm going to go throw up. It's really physical making these drinks. I don't know if you've seen like these kind of bartenders, but they like shake the drinks really hard. And each drink is pretty complicated. Our drinks range between like 5 and 9 ingredients. You're measuring like 1/8 of a teaspoon. So each drink is pretty like its own work of art. And it was taking forever for the drinks to come out. We must have had like 200 or 300 people in the room. Well, one guy making 300 drinks for all those people is just insane. Normally we would try and like, have a wait list, but at this point I was like, you know what? Seat yourself. It's first come, first serve. If you can find a table, have a seat. I wasn't getting waters out on the tables. I wasn't greeting people. I was barely being nice to people. So this is all happening, and this guy is standing, preventing me from taking all these drinks out. And it's probably like 20 drinks that I need to garnish and run. And he's physically getting really angry, and I didn't have a manager, was the other problem. I didn't have anybody who could like help me out, and we were trying to get a hold of him. Normally he doesn't work on Sundays. My manager is kind of an old school restaurant guy. And he kind of has like a laissez-faire attitude. And I had told him earlier in the night, I texted him and was upset about a lot of things. And he kind of brushed it off. It was a feeling of feeling unsupported over a long period of time. This was kind of the night that broke the camel's back. Once it got really insane, I had called him, my husband had called him, our barback had called him, everybody had called him, and we couldn't get a hold of him.
Please leave your message.
He was actually doing bar business. He just wasn't available to answer his phone. So it wasn't that he was skipping out on the job. At one point I ran to the back to like get something, and I tripped and fell, and I was so frustrated that I screamed like an animal at the top of my lungs. I just was mad. I heard later that everybody in the bar heard. All 200, 300 people like turned their head and like was like, what? 4 or 5 customers ran to the back to see if I was being raped. And I had to be like, oh, no, I'm fine, it's good. I'm okay, just back here screaming. And I was like, should I go back out there? Should I? Because I was really embarrassed. I was like, I can't leave the bartenders by themselves. So actually, once I got that out, I was a little bit nicer. And then one of the worst regulars that we've ever had showed up. And this woman hasn't lived in New York for like 2 years. It was like everything was crazy. And this woman, I turn around and she looks at me like, I'm back. I didn't have the appropriate facial reaction. I should have like smiled back and been like, oh, hey, welcome back. But it couldn't make my face work. And I'm sure she could read the look of horror on my face. My manager is really a great person to have in your corner. Once he did get all the messages, he ran right back to the bar. And he did help us out. But it was kind of too late at that point by the time he got the messages. This woman who was our regular, I haven't seen her in years. And of course she'd be back tonight. She's a nice woman, but she likes a lot of special treatment. We did not have the time to give it to her. She is in the field of education, in higher education, and she has a lot of opinions about a lot of things, which she will share with you. The bar is kind of a haven for nerds because people can get super nerdy into the drinks. So we kind of attract a lot of people who might not feel comfortable or safe letting loose in other bars. but for some reason they feel like our bar is a place that is welcoming to them, so they feel okay to let loose. The like classic dancing on the tables, being very loud, drinking too much, which is normal for bars, I understand that. She likes to sing, she likes to laugh really loud. These things are not bad in and of themselves, but when she's the only one left at the bar, it's not so fun for the staff.
Exactly.
We were almost done with the night. I was giving last call to all the tables, and when I gave last call to her table, she was like, oh, I have 2 more friends coming. So she ordered drinks for her friends that hadn't even shown up yet, and it was like, you know what, of course you do. Of course you have more friends coming now that we're trying to close. So they end up coming, and we're closing the bar. They're still having a great time. They're taking pictures. They call me over to take a picture or two for them. We end up doing like basically a photo shoot. We got to get the candles in the right place for the right lighting. There's maybe like 5 or 6 of them. Eventually, we get them shooed out the door. And so finally, by the end of the night, we made a lot of money. That was like the one good fact. Like, okay, we made more money than we normally would have on a Sunday. And we were able to close the bar. At this point, it's an hour or so later than when we normally close the bar. And we're locking up. We're still kind of laughing at like how ludicrously insane it was. Like, I can't believe we did this. And as we're locking up, I swear to God, it felt like he was 7 feet tall. He couldn't have been 7 feet tall, but he was a huge lumbering man, barreling at us from across the street, like walking through traffic, not even caring about the cars. This man is wasted, beet red, walking straight towards us. He's kind of like yelling unintelligibly, and he has like a very thick southern accent. And we're an interracial couple. And when he finally gets close enough to us, the first recognizable word that I hear coming out of his mouth is Trump, which makes you think of all sorts of things, not all of them good. So we're like, oh great, this is where we get murdered. Finally, it comes out that he is actually just looking for the Trump Soho Hotel, which isn't great either, but we were like, oh, it's that way, just go that way. I'm sure we didn't direct him in the right place, but we just wanted him to get away. So we were like, we just need to eat dinner. So we go to one of our favorite like late night spots, a 24-hour diner that's kind of nearby that's really great. And this place is packed too. We're sitting down, and the place is so packed that there's a door guy. There's like a wait outside in the street. And we finally get a table. We're relaxed. We're so tired we can't even make eye contact. My feet feel swollen, and we're waiting for our food. And this group sits down next to us, and it's everything that you hate about being a server in one table. And these girls were like, they were very pretty. They were all dressed up and dolled up. And they were like, I need to order right now. And trying to get the guy's attention. There were 2 very rich guys. They were talking about how much money they made and like what you could buy in Texas versus what you could buy in New York. Just talking about all their luxuries that they had. When our food came, one of the girls hit me. Like, not even like a nudge. She whacked me. I was like, what are you eating? You could tell these girls were like insta-famous because they were talking about how they were obsessed with fame. Those were their words. They're just obsessed with fame. They were talking about how they were friends with Rihanna and being like, not that I'm friends with Riri. I'm not like trying to brag, but just like the fact that we hang out with Riri all the time, and that's just the relationship. That's just the relationship that we have. It's like not a thing, it's just like what it is. So we're like really good friends. They just kept talking about how friendly they were with Rihanna. It was like everything that I had just been through, that I thought I had escaped, had just sat next to me. Just so presumptuous, so like entitled to everything kind of attitude. Oh, God. I hated them. I hated them! At this point, it's probably 5:30 a.m., maybe 6 a.m. We get in a cab, we go uptown where we live, and we get into our building, we get to the elevator, and of course it was broken. So we walked up the stairs, and that was it. We went to bed, and I didn't know if I would wake up again, but I did.
You're listening to Falling Uphill on 8-Ball Radio. Thanks to Augustus, Dan, and Lauren. I'll be back with another episode in 2 weeks. If you'd like to learn more about the show, visit www.fallinguphill.org. For show notes and links to the music you heard, visit fallinguphill.org/episodes.